All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Ashley Crocker. I am the Communications Director here at Progress Virginia, and thank you so much for joining us. Just to let you know, I am home with my baby, so if you hear any crying in the background, please ignore it. My husband will take care of it. And we're going to go through our legislative priorities on session eve. We're excited for tomorrow and all of the wonderful bills that we're going to be working on. If you have questions, please feel free to throw them in the Q&A box or the chat box, and we'll have time to answer them all at the end. So I'm going to start by going through the bills that are our top priorities this year, things that we're really hoping that we're going to pass, and then things that are longer term priorities that we're going to continue to work on this session, but we're not sure if they will pass this year or not. And then we'll talk about all of the resources that we're providing and what all of these bills do. And then lastly, we'll talk about how you guys can get involved and help us pass all of these awesome bills. So to start, these bills are our top priorities, and in a few minutes we'll go in more in depth about what all of these bills do. But minimum wage up to $15 an hour by 2024 is a huge priority for us, as well as the Borrower's Bill of Rights, which will help us tackle the student loan debt crisis. We're also going all in on the Reproductive Health Protection Act to make sure that everybody can access abortion. We're also going to be working on driver's license for everyone, including undocumented immigrants. We'll be supporting a package of democracy reforms that includes automatic voter registration and no excuse absentee voting. And then the last thing we hope to get done this year is repealing the work requirements for Medicaid expansion so that everybody who qualifies can get the health care that they need when they need it. And then some of our longer term priorities are the Reproductive Health Equity Act, in-state tuition for immigrants, and paid family and medical leave, which will give folks 12 weeks off work if they welcome a new child, if they have a serious illness, or if they need to spend some time caring for a loved one. So for all of these bills, we are going to be doing a bunch of different things. We have been and will continue to train people to tell their story, and then they can join us at hearings and give testimony, tell their personal story to legislators and tell them why they should vote a certain way. We're also going to be providing talking points and fact sheets to both activists and legislators so that everybody has all of the information that they need about all of these bills, what they do, talking points, facts about each bill, the economic impact, and all of the information that you need to know. We'll also be working to generate positive press coverage that features impacted people. That's one of our core values here at Progress Virginia, is we always want to be lifting up the voices of people who are the most impacted. And we did that today with our press conference for the minimum wage. We had 4 amazing speakers who all shared their personal stories about living on low wages. And we will continue to do that for all of the bills that we're supporting. And then we're also, on the digital side, we'll be creating action alerts and running digital ads and making sure that everybody who needs to know knows about all of these bills and how it will impact them in their personal lives. So to go into in-depth to minimum wage, this one is pretty self-explanatory, but the most important thing here is that we want it to be 15, no lower than that, and we want it to be done by 2024, no later than that. Some legislators are talking, well, maybe we can get to 11 by 2028, and that's just not good enough. We want to make sure that everybody in our Commonwealth can work one job and succeed in our communities. And the way to do that is by raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. We also want to make sure that we're getting rid of a lot of the exemptions on the minimum wage, exemptions for piecework, exemptions for people who have certain kinds of jobs. We want to get rid of all of those and make sure that we're not leaving anyone behind and that everybody who's working in the Commonwealth of Virginia is making at least $15 an hour. The Borrower's Bill of Rights is basically a bill that would protect student loan borrowers and make sure that their servicers could not take advantage of them. A lot of times people will call their student loan servicers and they will get misleading information. They'll be put into the wrong program. They'll have their payments applied improperly. And so what this bill would do is require borrowers to give them accurate information, and give student loan debt holders the same protections that people who have mortgages or credit card loans or credit card debt have. And we think that's really a really important step to tackling the student loan debt crisis. The Reproductive Health Protection Act is going to repeal burdensome restrictions on abortion access. It will repeal the trap laws that regulate abortion clinics like hospitals and mandate really silly things like the number of parking spaces that you have to have and how wide your hallways are and how many water fountains you have. Things that are totally medically unnecessary and really just designed to shut down abortion clinics. So we're gonna try to repeal that. This bill also removes the requirement that abortion is only performed by physicians, so that advanced care practitioners like nurse practitioners and other people can provide abortion care as well. We're also going to get rid of the unnecessary ultrasound requirement so that nobody has to go through a medically unnecessary medical procedure. And then the last thing that this bill does is it'll get rid of the 24-hour mandatory waiting period so that nobody has to go to their appointment, wait 24 hours, and then go again, which will prevent people from having to take multiple days off work, especially people who live in certain parts of the state have to drive like multiple hundreds of miles to get to an abortion clinic, and then they have to take off work, they have to find transportation, they have to find childcare for their children. And so if we got rid of this 24-hour waiting period, we would prevent all of that. We're also going to be supporting driver's licenses for everybody. That means that everybody will have the ability to drive to work, get to school and their house of worship. It's really important that undocumented people have that ability so that everybody knows the rules of the road and our roads are safe. Currently, 272,000 undocumented people in Virginia don't have driver's licenses, and it prevents them from accessing services, getting jobs, and having their proper driver's training. So that's a big thing that we're going to be pushing this year as well. And then some of the democracy reforms that we're going to be pushing this year is HB 1. It's going to be no excuse absentee voting, which means that anybody during the early vote period, 45 days before an election, can go and cast a ballot in person or via mail before the election. That means people don't have to wait in line on election day. If single moms or people who are working jobs and are busy, they don't have to find time on election day to vote. They'll have a whole 45 days before the election to make a plan and get out to vote. And then automatic voter registration will use data that's already exists between the DMV and the Department of Elections to automate the voter registration process and automatically register eligible voters unless they opt out. And that just makes it easier for people. A lot of people don't know that they're not registered to vote and they show up on election day and are told that they can't, and that's a real problem. We're also going to be supporting redistricting reform with specific protections for people of color. That'll be Delegate Price's bill, and we think that'll be a great thing to go hand in hand with the redistricting constitutional amendment that's already out there. And then the last thing that we want to do this year is repeal work requirements for Medicaid expansion. Currently, in order to qualify for health insurance through Medicaid expansion, you have to have a job. And but people who are sick aren't able to go to work sometimes. And what it actually does is it means that people who really would qualify and do have jobs have to jump through a lot of bureaucratic red tape and sorry, I lost my train of thought. They have to jump through a lot of bureaucratic red tape, and people needlessly get kicked off. And the real thing is about it is that having work requirements for Medicaid expansion costs Virginians more than $25 million. And it's really just kicking people when they're down, and can lead to 74,000 people losing their health insurance coverage when they're sick, when they might have a job and just aren't sure how to jump through those hoops. And so we're going to do that through the budget process and make sure that everybody who needs to see a doctor is able to do it, regardless of whether or not they are working. And I see that someone is asking for bill numbers. We have bill numbers for some of these bills, but not all of them. The minimum wage bill is going to be SB 7 in the Senate and HB 395 in the House. The Borrower's Bill of Rights is going to be HB 10 in the House, with Delegate Simon and Delegate Price, and then it'll be Senate Bill 77 sponsored by Delegate Howell or Senator Howell. The Reproductive Health Protection Act doesn't have a bill number yet. Driver's licenses doesn't have a bill number yet. No excuse absentee voting is going to be HB 1 in the House, and it doesn't have a companion yet, but it will. Automatic voter registration doesn't have a bill number yet, but it will. And then Medicaid work requirements are through the budget process, so it doesn't have a bill number. Moving on to some of our longer term priorities. The Reproductive Health Equity Act is something that we worked on last year and is something that we're going to be continuing to work on this year and probably through the next couple of years. What this bill does is make sure that insurance, abortion is covered by insurance so that people don't have to pay out of pocket if they need an abortion. It also would include family planning and postpartum care for all Virginians, regardless of income, immigration status, gender identity, or type of insurance. So that means people can't be discriminated against if they're trans or non-binary, and they can access the reproductive health care that they need, because a lot of times people who are transgender have a really difficult time accessing the health care they need because their health insurance doesn't have the right gender marker, and so they can't get the services they need. So that's a real problem. And then again, people who are undocumented have a really difficult time getting health insurance in general. And we think that everybody should be able to get an abortion if they make that decision. And so this will just make sure that everybody, all of us in Virginia, have the same access to abortion that everybody else does. Then lastly, maybe, oh no, there's one more. There's paid family and medical leave to make sure that everybody's able to balance family and work obligations. This program would provide up to 12 weeks of paid leave benefits to workers to deal with any problems that they are having, caring for a loved one, recovering from a serious illness, welcoming a new family member, although that's not usually a problem. But the benefits would be equivalent to 80% of a worker's usual wages. And then it's financed through a small employer and employee payroll contributions. And it also means that if you take paid family and medical leave, that your job is protected, meaning you don't have to worry about losing your job while you're out on leave. And this is really important, especially for people in our generation who are balancing the needs between caring for their own children and then also caring for their aging parents who need a lot of help at home as well, and may need to step away from their work obligations in order to make sure that their family is okay. And then lastly, for real this time, is in-state tuition for immigrants. which would allow people who are applying for permanent resident status to pay the in-state tuition rate instead of the out-of-state tuition rate, so that everybody in our community has access to higher education. So those are our major bills this year. And the things that you can do to help make sure that these bills pass are show up for committee hearings and tell your story. Oftentimes we don't get a lot of notice and it can be difficult to show up in Richmond, but if you can possibly take an afternoon or a morning to come to the General Assembly and tell legislators your story, why you would benefit from raising the minimum wage, or why the Student Loan Borrowers Bill of Rights would make an impact for you, that is one of the most powerful things that you can do. We're also happy to help you submit letters to the editor or op-eds to your local paper. And then we're also going to be hosting 2 lobby days this year. The Women's Equality Coalition Lobby Day is on January 13th, and they will be advocating for 4 bills that are part of the WEC agenda. So that is just on Monday, so it's less than a week away. We're really excited. We're expecting about 150 people to descend upon the Capitol and really advocate for these bills. And then also there's going to be the Minimum Wage Lobby Day on January 21st. And that one is going to be a bunch of folks, hopefully a lot of union people, coming to support raising the minimum wage. And then also we'll be sending a lot of action alerts. So you'll get emails where you'll be able to sign petitions or contact your legislators. And that's another hugely important way that we can be impactful if we call our legislators and say, I'm your constituent and I really want you to support this bill. All right, that is all I've got. Does anybody have any questions? I see one that says, is there buy-in from immigrant groups and immigrant communities? I guess this is about the driver's licenses bills. My understanding is that yes, there is buy-in. We are working with the Virginia Coalition of Immigrant Rights on the driver's licenses bills, and that is a coalition of a bunch of different immigrant rights groups. So yes, I would say that there is buy-in from folks, and we are following their lead and hoping to really feature those people who would be impacted by the fight there. And then the second part of this question is, have you heard from law enforcement on this? That's not something that I'm sure about, but I could find out and get back to you on that one. Are there other questions? You can put them in the chat box or in the Q&A. I'll give somebody a few minutes to write that. And otherwise, I appreciate you guys so much for joining us. I hope that you are as excited for the General Assembly as I am. It is going to be a crazy 60 days, but I am so excited that we're going to be able to actually pass some bills this year and really make a big difference for people in our community. Oh, I see one question. Oh, I don't see the whole thing. It just says, maybe you said this, but I don't know what maybe I said. Oh, of all of these things, what is the top priority? I would say that there are several top priorities because we like to make things hard for ourselves. But for me, I think raising the minimum wage, the top 3 are probably raising the minimum wage, the Borrowers' Bill of Rights, and the Reproductive Health Equity Act. But all of these bills we're going to be working on throughout session, and we'll be doing all of the same things for these bills. Some of them just have bigger coalitions than others. Does that help? All right. Well, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you joining us, and we look forward to the start of session tomorrow, and I'm sure we will be in touch with all of our action alerts, and I hope to see you around the building giving your testimony. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.